something happened in September, and the woman giving birth, she's supposed to be, according to the law in the Old Testament, she's supposed to be unclean for 40 days, right? And that takes us right to October 30 or 31st. It's something related with the wheat, the feast of barley and
Oh no, you're talking about tabernacles.
tabernacles. I'm sorry, yeah, the feast of tabernacles, yeah.
You threw me off with the broth. Yeah, the tabernacles is interesting. It just ended.
It just ended now.
Yeah, right. As a matter of fact,
Yeah.
just a day ago it ended.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, why that's interesting is tabernacles has to do with grapes, because the final grape harvest comes in.
Okay.
Now, the grapes also represent wrath of God when the winepress
The
of
wine
His wrath.
press.
Yeah, which is tying into what you're talking about.
Oh, can I say something?
Yeah.
In regards to grapes and the grape
Yeah.
fields out in the
On
Napa
the chart?
Valley of California where all
Oh, yeah,
those
it's on there,
fires,
yeah.
is there a significance in those fires as being the grape harvest being like destroyed?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Okay, I'm
It
glad
just-
you asked that question. I'll tell you why.
Good question.
It's a very good question. I'm going to tell you why. Could you hand this to me right here, please?
She's full of starch and venom.
Oh.
Have you've met her?
No, the other, underneath.
She's outrageous, you know, she's outrageous. She had a brain surgery.
There are many things on the internet
I don't think anyone.
that take biblical truths
The tumor was as big as a sock.
and try to apply them to everyday circumstances. And it's very deceiving. I'm going to tell you why. All the feasts of Israel have this disclaimer. Everybody's heard of disclaimers today.
Yeah.
In front of them. When you come into the land of Israel, you shall do X, Y, or Z. Harvest the grapes. Harvest the oil. The land of Israel is where this is associated with prophecy. If the Napa Valley burns down totally, it has nothing to do with Bible prophecy.
No.
Nothing to do with it. Now, but the sun, the moon, and the stars, they do, because it's the age of Pentecost, the fourth day of creation. And He created them for signs and seasons and days and years. But I know many people now are taking little things that happen and applying it to Bible prophecy. But it's always about the land of Israel. What's going on in the land of Israel? Now, if you would hear something happen in Israel,
Oh, I see.
it could have extreme messianic implications.
Yeah.
For example, the actual Sea of Galilee is starting to actually dry. And
Really?
there's a little island appearing
Why?
in the middle of it.
What does that mean?
Well, in Israel, dry land is always associated with redemption. So the Jews came across the Red Sea on dry land. Joshua came across the Jordan on dry land. Why that's important is dry land is associated with salvation. In the Bible, if you're wet, you're dead. If you're dry, you're alive.
Oh, that's funny. It's just the opposite.
Oh,
Watch. You're baptized into Christ's death, you're wet, and you come up, you're dry.
yes.
Christ,
Cool.
on the resurrection day, Christ comes out of the earth, which is water in the center. So He comes through the water, and He's on dry land. He's standing up. So we're baptized in Noah, and the flood is a type of baptism.
Oh, wow.
All the people who died are wet in the flood. The dry people in the ark.
Wow.
Spirit. Spirit, dry, wet, dead. Alright? That's why baptism prefigures the death. Your death to yourself, and you're alive in the Spirit.
That's pretty cool.
Okay? Wet, you're dead, dry, you're alive. So when the Jews see the Sea of Galilee drying up and an island appearing, they're actually saying this has messianic implications.
Yeah.
Alright?
So
That's
are
why-
they excited to see that there's an island forming?
Oh yeah. There's a lot of things
So do they
happening.
think that means the Messiah is coming?
Yeah, they know He's coming. I mean,
Oh, okay.
the messianic expectation in Israel is, I can't even explain it to you.
Netanyahu loves the Christians. I listened to him last night. He says the people that are supporting Israel the most are the Christians. It was like awesome. He just loves us.
And he admitted he has Bible. He now admitted publicly he has Bible studies every week.
Wow, that's amazing.
And he said Old Testament and New Testament. He told the United Nations that. So he says Bible prophecy is being fulfilled, and he said a huge Bible prophecy is about to be fulfilled. And he says We're trying to avoid it, and that can only mean one thing.
They'll be annihilated.
Secret 38.
Yeah, it can only mean one thing, and it's right. Matter of fact, 2 nights ago, about 48 hours ago, when they attacked Syria, and they bombed the Russian arsenal and the Iranian arsenal. Then what he did is he got on the phone and invited Sergei, who is the Russian defense minister. By the way, Sergei is Cyrillic for shepherd. His name actually means the shepherd, Sergei. He invited the shepherd over, the hireling, he invited him over to Israel to tell him, if Russia and Iran do not leave, they're gonna take them out. And I heard he told him point blank. And I don't think they're fooling around. I think he got the green light from the White House. He tried to get the green light all during this time. If you study prophecy, study Elam, E-L-A-M. That's the ancient name for Iran, and it tells you what happens there. Every single person goes to another country. Now that'll do two things immediately. It will alleviate the threat to Israel, and those people will go to places where the gospel is being preached, or at least open to the gospel, outside of that 1040 window over there. Who's heard of the 1040 window that missionaries talk about?
Yeah.
Right. So that'll be interesting, because that prophecy says that they'll actually flee to all these countries, the Iranians.
Wow.
I just met an Iranian the other night in church. I think he's affiliated with you.
Oh, yeah.
Russia?
For Shad, yeah.
Yeah, and we were talking about how Iran, the people of Iran are really great people. They really
Yes,
are.
they are, yeah.
And they're looking forward to a day when they don't have this oppression in
Yes.
government.
Yeah.
It must be horrible living under that type of government. But they're open to so much. And
Are
it's
they Muslim?
Well, he said that you know, you live under a very oppressive thinking pattern, because anybody can charge you with offending Allah or blaspheming the Prophet or whatever. And once somebody says anything against you like that, you're done.
Yeah, kind of like the Inquisition.
So he said that most people they live there with a fear
Yeah.
of anybody, you know, that hate them or have anything against them, to accuse them of something they never did. And so anyway, he said that people are really fed up with the whole system.
I also told him, I said, from your behavior that I'm observing, you've got to be involved with security somehow. He said, I can't talk about that.
You met him at the church?
I just watched his behavior. I said that he's involved with security.
He was working for
where?
some government,
Sempre está vindo assim.
He's the FBI.
Bom,
They stand behind
Oh, if you're
you.
Iranian and you want to work for the FBI and you speak Farsi, tomorrow you can have a job.
yeah.
Yeah.
He was in the military, and yeah.
So what day in the Hebrew calendar coincides with this Halloween day?
Oh, okay. What's interesting there is, I know a lot of people were talking about that with Obama's speech,
October 30,
When did he speak?
October 31st.
31st.
Yeah, I don't know what that's all about, what that entails politically, what he's
He's
going to
going
say.
to speak on Halloween.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he's going to address his re-entry into national, like
The
international
Devil's Day.
politics. It'll probably be some type of, I would say, United Nations embassy job with the UN. I don't know, we'll have to wait and see. But what's interesting now is the Hebrew sacred calendar actually ends on the 21st day of the 7th month. So we're right at that right now.
Tishri.
Yeah, Tishri. Now we're in the period now where they're looking forward to the beginning of the sacred calendar again. All right? So there's that time that they talk about, you're waiting for the harvest time to sow and reap.
Yeah.
So now they're waiting for that. But the next big holiday, believe it or not, that's coming up is dedication, Hanukkah.
Yeah.
So in John 10, when Christ is walking back and forward on the stones of Solomon,
That's December, right?
right, it's in the winter.
Yeah.
It's always 9th month, 25th day, which coincides with our,
Christmas.
right.
Yeah.
So that's interesting because King David Friedman said that the peace treaty should be finished by then.
Wow.
He's working it.
Whoa.
The announcement of a peace treaty.
Oh my.
Man, I'm telling you.
And
Peace,
what was
peace,
the
and
date?
sudden destruction.
Will be the Feast of Dedication, which is also called Hanukkah.
Thank you. And what day is that on our calendar this year?
I think it would probably be around December, on our calendar this year, probably around December 15th, 14th.
Yeah, it's before Christmas. Yeah.
2 years ago, it actually was the same day. I think,
Yeah.
2 years ago. Hanukkah and Christmas were the
Yeah,
same.
exactly, yeah,
It was, right in there.
Yeah, I think I remember that.
It actually
Yeah.
coincided.
yeah.
Which in itself was a very interesting sign on a biblical calendar.
Why
Those
does it
two
float
dates
like
were
that? Why does it float like that?
I'm sorry?
Why is it floating like that?
Oh, because the Hebrews use a lunar solar calendar. It's mostly solar, and they go by the new moon, but they use the sun to readjust the calendar, the equinoxes, whereas the Gregorian calendar, the one we're on, is solar. We go by a solar calendar. So the Hebrew calendar actually is more accurate using the sun and the moon.
Do they have more days in a month?
They can, depend upon when they cite the new moon.
Yeah.
They can.
Okay.
And you have to be adjusted every so often. Add a month, take a month, right?
Now what's interesting is
Add a month.
Pentecost,
Or a day.
Add a month.
yeah, they can add a day, and
A day.
sometimes they will add a month.
A month, yeah. It
Yeah.
depends.
Over a longer period of time
Yeah, yeah.
to correct the calendar. They'll
To
have
correct it.
extend it. But
Do most of the Jewish people in Israel go by that calendar?
yeah, there's a different calendar for the Jews that are in the diaspora, which mean living outside the land of Israel,
Okay.
and those that live inside the land of
Oh,
Israel.
okay.
Yeah, different calendar. Around here, they usually fix their calendars based on the Gregorian, which really isn't a Hebrew calendar. So when John says in the Gospels, a feast of the Jews was close or near, he's talking about the Jews actually changing things to suit themselves. But other times John will say, and the feast of Passover was nigh, meaning this is the date that God ordained. Because what the Jews did is they took the 7 days and the 1 day and tried to make them one big holiday.
Okay,
Because they had to travel such long distances. God said, you must not mix these two dates up. You must not. These are my dates, not yours. So John is saying, you know what the Jews are doing? They're making their own dates up. So sometimes you'll just see, this is Passover.
yeah.
And John's
I
trying
used to get confused.
Yeah, the Spirit's telling you that they actually are conflating the dates. And some of the kings of Israel actually made up their own dates. One guy actually made a new tabernacle and a new Passover. You might want to go into all that, but do you remember that at all?
That was
Yeah.
Jeroboam.
Yep.
You didn't.
He was one of them, yes.
Right.
Where they're making their own dates because they got tired of the old. They said, we're going to make our own. Especially between Jeroboam and Rehoboam, because you had the kingdom of Israel and the kingdom of Judah. And they didn't actually want to come into Jerusalem at all.
Yeah.
So they said, let's make one a little shorter, a little closer. Yeah. Because 3 of these feasts, see, Tabernacles, Pentecost, and Passover, they're pilgrim festivals, which means every male must appear in Jerusalem for this feast. No one cannot come. But what they did is they changed the pilgrim feast to Samaria so they wouldn't have to come. This is one of the reasons why Jonah is very upset about going to Nineveh. Because he knows what's going to happen if all the people in Nineveh repent and get saved. What he was worrying about is, does anybody know where Jonah's from? Jonah is from the same place as John the Apostle. He's from Zebulun.
Okay.
And Zebulun are the ones that dwell in ships. Jonah is a seafaring man. And Jonah is from Gath-Hepher. And what he realizes is that Nineveh is a threat to Israel, where he's from, but it's not a threat to Judah. But he's prophesying also about Jerusalem. So what he's worrying about is Israel being destroyed. That's what he's really worried about. But when it's preached, it's like Jonah is a coward, he doesn't. That's really not what's, Jonah's worried about what's going to happen to the kingdom of Israel. And it tells you this in another book. But if you never turn there, you'll never know it.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
You'd be
Yeah.
surprised that information is in the book of Chronicles. People never read Chronicles. It's so boring. It has information no other book has.
Yeah.
Wow.
Wow.
So that type of information is in there. So Jonah is a great type of that. That's why Jesus said that the only sign given shall be the sign of Jonah.
Yeah.
Because Jonah is about the destruction of Jerusalem. It's really what it's about. So Nineveh is a type of Jerusalem.
Wow.
Because Jonah was really prophesying about the destruction of Jerusalem. Jericho is a type of Jerusalem. Okay? Jericho means the city of the moon, and Jerusalem is the city of the moon. That's when the festivals are.
Huh.
So Jericho being destroyed is the type of Jerusalem being destroyed by fire in the last days. So all these are types, and if you don't catch on to it, you won't know why are they blowing trumpets and circling Jericho. Well, you notice it's 7, 7, 7.
March around the walls of Jericho.
What's the Ark of the Covenant? In Revelation, you have 7 seals, 7 trumpets, and 7 vials. Same pattern. Destruction of Jerusalem by fire. So it's the same patterns going on.
So you're saying it's probably gonna be nuked? Jerusalem?
It'll be destroyed by fire. Yeah.
It will
It could be nukes, could be
It'll be destroyed by fire.
anything, could be literal fire.
When they flee, what's interesting is when they flee, and Sodom and Gomorrah is a type of Jerusalem being destroyed, and Sodom and Gomorrah is destroyed by fire. The remnant escapes. Who's the remnant? Lot.
Yeah.
Lot's a type of the remnant. So the remnant will escape to the mountains, like Lot escaped to the mountains. And basically the same area where Lot escaped. It's basically, they'll escape to the mountains, but Jerusalem itself, most people in Jerusalem will be destroyed. Just only a
This is during
small,
the tribulation you're talking about, right?
most of the people.
Did you say something significant about the year 5778?
Yeah, 5777 and 5778. It's very significant because,
And when's that year?
well, we're in it right now.
Oh,
But what's interesting about the year is the Pentecost season in days and in months and in years matches 5778. And God said He gave the sun, the moon, the stars for signs and seasons and days and years. And Pentecost is the only season where you have 3 feasts on this side, 3 feasts on this side.